Before we get to the video clip of Noam Chomsky, he has expressed views sympathetic to Palestinians and critical of how they are often labeled as terrorists rather than resistance fighters in mainstream discourse. Chomsky's perspective on this matter stems from his broader critique of U.S. foreign policy, particularly its involvement in the Middle East and its support for Israel. He argues that the Palestinian struggle should be understood within the context of resistance against occupation, colonization, and dispossession rather than being simplistically labeled as terrorism. Now off to this wonderful clip of Noam Chomsky.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for doing this. This is a great honor for us that you.
With you.
Even when we are having a family conversation, we need to deal with problematic communication. Often it gets very emotional. Our parents and families have trust issues and traumas related to the Palestinian people. They carry memories of severe terrorist attacks and violence. When asked who is to blame, they blame terrorist organization and incitement in the Arab world. We have family members who voted for extreme right-wing parties that promise to restore deterrence, which has become a very popular term in Israeli media. When the emotional tendency is always towards our soldiers, our children, it's hard to contain the suffering of the other side. How would you, Professor, address those people?
Well, I'm quite familiar with them. The way to address them is to try to encourage them to look at the actual history, which is not obscure. The so-called, first of all, the word terrorist, as you probably know, is a pretty recent innovation into Israel. What used to be called mistananim are now called mechablim, but no change. When I lived in Israel in the early 50s, some people in the kibbutz where I was simply refused to go on to take arms when they went to guard duty because the mistananim were just Palestinians who had been evicted by violence coming back to tend their fields. They didn't think they had not yet become terrorists. As the Israeli occupation became harsher and more brutal, especially after 1967, it naturally elicited resistance. And the occupiers, who are there illegally, of course, naturally feel that the resistance is terrorism. Think of some unpleasant analogies, if you like. So the slogan of the Gestapo was terror against terror. They were going to use terror against the terror of the partisans. And the partisans did resort to terror. In the areas that the Nazis occupied, there was what the Nazis regarded as terrorist resistance. That's very common. You can find many other examples. The Russians now talk about Ukrainian terrorism in the regions that they occupied. It's very natural, understandable. It's our boys fighting out there on the front line, destroying Palestinian villages, beating people, killing them, protecting. Take this morning, Eviatar. You saw the description. Okay, I don't have to describe it. The Palestinians who were throwing stones at the thousands of illegal settlers who were going to an illegal settlement under protection of the IDF. They're terrorists. So the IDF shoots tear gas, rubber bullets, injures them to protect the innocent people who are simply going to the illegal colony of Eviatar. Notice that this is right next to Beita. Israelis should know what happened in Beita. Won't go through it, but it's one of the worst, most ugly, vicious crimes of the occupation. I happened to be able to visit it right at the time when the Israeli army was smashing it to pieces. went with friends from Al-Haq. We managed to break through military curfew through back roads and got in to see what it actually looked like. Far worse than it was being reported. And there was absolutely no credible pretext for it. You know the story. So that's Beta. This is Eviatar on the borders of Beta. If you want to open the discussion with people who regard them as terrorists, ask them to look at that history. We can take case after case. I walk through the streets of Hebron, for example, and watch Israeli thugs from Kiryat Arba beating up Palestinians, overthrowing vegetable carts, throwing garbage at Palestinians' homes, attacking children on their way to school, all under the protection of the IDF. And then, of course, you get the terrorists who throw some stones at the soldiers. Well, okay, that's the natural structure of occupation, repression, and resistance. So you're living in the midst of it. And you can understand and sympathize with the people who don't like the fact that their children are on the front line having stones thrown at them by Palestinians. Sometimes Israelis get killed, not a fraction of Palestinians, of course. And you can perfectly well understand it. But you have to extricate yourself from it slowly, simply by going through the very well documented, unquestioned historical facts. You can read about them every day. Read Gideon Levy's regular articles in Haaretz, for example, every day. Another atrocity, another crime. That's quite apart from Gaza, which is beyond horrendous. I've visited Gaza. It's astonishing that people can even survive the brutal and vicious Israeli attacks. 1 million children with no water to drink. It's all poison. Israel destroys the energy system, sewage system, the environment. You can't even call it a prison. Prisons are better taken care of. Well, that's Gaza. So yes, you get young people coming to the fence and throwing stones at Israeli soldiers, terrorists. Okay. Well, just try to get people to look at the facts that are in front of their eyes. It's hard. I mean, I've had the same problem for 80 years.
Chomsky has often highlighted the power dynamics at play, emphasizing the vast power differential between Israel and the Palestinians. He criticizes the mainstream media and political establishment for framing the conflict in a way that delegitimizes Palestinian resistance while justifying Israeli actions. Chomsky's stance aligns with broader debates about the language used to describe political violence and armed resistance. He argues that the term terrorism is often politically charged and selectively applied to certain groups, serving to delegitimize their grievances and resistance efforts. Well, I hope you liked the video and give the channel a subscribe. If you wish, you can join the channel as a member, it would be greatly appreciated. Also, if you would check out and subscribe to my other channel, Progressive Movement, link is on the homepage and in the comments section. Thank you. Now, take care and bye-bye.